Speaking of young teams getting a pretty solid coach, Tom Thibodeau of Minnesota, also president of basketball operations. He's got the flowing block photo we've seen from him in his early days there in his warm-up tracksuit, returning about 15, 20 years later. Justin, what do you think about this move?
Well, if we're going to talk about Minnesota quickly, we're going to give a quick shout out. Rest in peace to Prince.
Yeah, of
Was
course.
really sad. Just figured we might as well do that. When it comes to Thibodeau and the Bulls, I think it's a great hire. The only thing that concerns me a little bit was I feel like Thibodeau is a guy you hire 3 years from now, once the developments occurred, to kind of get you over the hump. I actually like Brooks potentially there originally, but Thibodeau he was the best coach available in the market. It's a huge get. Maybe the offensive concerns in Chicago, I think, were a little overblown. You look at what they've done under Fred Hoiberg, and they've actually gone backwards offensively and defensively. He's worked with a point guard that couldn't shoot before in Derrick Rose, although I'm not sure if they're going to keep Ricky Rubio. But you look what he did with Joakim Noah. He turned Joakim Noah into an MVP candidate. With Karl-Anthony Towns, the defensive potential that he could unlock with this team, and especially because he does have some control over the roster, I think you're going to see this team really change a lot this summer, add a lot of pieces, be active in the trade market. They went after Chris Middleton, which I don't believe was actually available at the deadline. It might be something that they do on draft night. So there's a lot of possibilities there, and I think it's going to be a quick turnaround for Minnesota.
Phil, I'm thinking about Andrew Wiggins here and defensively. Do you think Thibodeau's going to have a major influence on him?
Oh, I think the whole team. When we were looking at what he can do with Joakim Noah, and then you look at what he can do with Gorgie Dieng, with Towns, with Wiggins, and all these guys. I think all these guys are going to have a huge uptake in their defensive abilities for next year. I think we're going to see them instead of bottom of the pack, kind of middle of the pack, because they're still going to have some development. And I think, as Justin alluded to, his impact on the offense is a bit underrated. I think he will improve and steady that ship. I kind of agree in the way that, it would have been nice in 2-3 years, but I kind of think it's nice to set the precedent now, know that there's that stability and that system is going to be in place so they grow into it. My one concern about this actually has zero to do with him as a coach. I am not the biggest fan of them being kind of half GM, half coach. I like how they brought in the assistant from San Antonio. I just hope he listens to him.
Leighton.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's going to be great. I think they're going to bring in some nice veterans. My only two concerns is, will he be detracted by having that dual role? And, the one knock as a coach in Chicago was that he overplayed his players. So can he look at Wiggins and Cat and, Levine and all these guys and play the long game and actually say, you know what, can I keep these guys at, 33 to 35 minutes each? I have pretty good depth. I have another good draft pick coming in. I know they're young and they can play a lot of minutes, but you don't want to burn them out now, as we're seeing with a lot of those stars in Chicago.
Right.
Well, let's go back to the dual role. I mean, you mentioned him. There's also Pop is doing that in San Antonio. We've got Doc Rivers, and we also got Stan Van Gundy. At least two of the three are doing relatively well. I mean, Justin, do you see him thriving with this two-role thing?
It's hard to say because he did feud with the Chicago ownership a fair amount, and that's what ultimately led to his dismissal, the kind of rifts within the front office. Now, that being said, Chicago's ownership is notoriously cheap. They poorly ran that team, and I think some of him overplaying those guys was him going, you didn't give me the supporting pieces. We had a great supporting cast. We had a great bench mob, and none of those players were retained. They had Omer Asik. They had Kyle Korver coming off the bench. They had tons of depth, and ownership kind of screwed him there. So maybe with the collaborative effort, maybe he's learned from his mistakes there, because obviously the fault isn't on one side. It's hard to say whether or not he's going to thrive. I don't know how active he's going to be, whether or not the actual GM that they brought in from the Spurs is going to have more influence. But you know what? He's a smart coach. He's been around the league for a very long time. He's seen a lot. He's done a lot of scouting, and something people have kind of overlooked. He spent all of this year traveling the NBA, going to Golden State, going to all the top teams, observing practice, taking notes. So I think that he's has a better understanding of the league now, which is impressive given how good he was before. But I think this year off is going to benefit him, and it'll be interesting to see if he also excels kind of in a semi-front office role.